Good morning and welcome to our reflections from the book of Genesis. As I was pondering on today's passage, I was walking on Highgate Common and the sun was shining, the trees were rustling gently in the breeze and the air was full of the sound of birdsong. There were countless creatures on the wing, butterflies, beautiful delicate dragonflies and a lot of bouncy dogs which came in all sizes and shapes, along with their owners who similarly were all sizes and shapes. And as I walked in that place and I listened to the birds' song, I was just full yet again with praise and thanks to God for the infinite variety of his creation and the privilege of enjoying it. And it struck me yet again that, creation wasn't an accident. It can't have been. This perfection, this intertwined nature of the growth and the creatures had to be a plan. A perfect plan. And our reading today tells us whose perfect plan it was. Normally, I'd begin by reading the passage of scripture, but we're going to have a look at chapter 1 in Genesis, and it's a very long piece of scripture, which I know that Ben has recently covered. So what I'd like to do is just look at the general structure of the passage and read some individual verses which speak to me, and hope that maybe you'll find time to go back and have a look for yourself at Genesis chapter 1. The very first verse of the Bible tells us, when God began to create the heavens and the earth was complete chaos, and darkness covered the face of the water, while a wind from God swept over the face of those waters. And so it was that God began the creative work of creating order from such chaos. And his first act was to create light and darkness, to differentiate the day and the night. And then God created the sky, and beneath it the oceans and the land. And on the third day, God created all things necessary for the growth on earth, for the trees, the flowers, the plants, the seeds, the fruits, the vegetables. And he looked at what he'd made, and he thought that it was good. On the fourth day, God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be signs for the seasons, for the days and the years, and let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And so it was that God set the pattern of the times and the seasons, the rhythms of life that we continue to enjoy today, the rhythms of life that bring us the infinite variety of the seasons and the bounty of the seasons on which we feast. Next, God created all of the living creatures, the creatures of the air and the oceans, followed by the multitudes of things that lived on the land, with 4 legs, 2 legs, many legs, no legs. God created them all. And on the 6th day, God created humans. And what's notable is that he created humans in his own likeness. And isn't that a thought to conjure with? When God made you and I, we weren't some random accident. He created us in his own image. And God blessed his creation, and he told them to be fruitful and to multiply. And to the people on earth, he reminded them that in his wisdom and love, he had created all that they needed for their life. And then comes my final favourite verse of this passage. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And then in the first 3 verses of chapter 2 we read this: "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the 6th day God finished the work that he had done. So on the 7th day God rested. And he blessed the 7th day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he'd done in creation." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Many faiths and communities have creation stories, and they have parallels in them. But when God asked Moses to record this creation account, we must assume that he had a purpose. It can be difficult to reconcile this story of 7 days with all we know about scientific discovery. with all we know about ice ages and dinosaurs and meteor strikes. And I know that those who are scientific and who don't have a faith will ask us questions, as indeed our own twins have done on many occasions. But it's not for me to make excuses for God. It's not for me to explain God. It's for me, for you, for us to simply accept that God thought this creation account was important enough to ask Moses to record it, and that we have something to learn from it. God created all that was necessary for life. He created the creatures and the people to enjoy his creation. And then he gave us custody of it. And for me, that's the first important message of this, that we have custody of the earth, responsibility to care for the abundance of God's creation. And I do think we need to look at ourselves and look at what we're doing to the earth. And look at the science of global warming, the evidence of rubbish in the seas that's killing the ocean creatures, the endless destruction that we're wreaking on the earth, and to ask ourselves, what can we do to make a difference? It's hard to think that God would look at what we're doing today and still think that it's very good, isn't it? It prompts me to think again about how I shop, how I dispose of things, what I use when I can recycle, how I can reuse and improve the way I look after the earth. Each one of us can do just a little bit, and we might think it won't make a difference, but one raindrop adds to another raindrop and another raindrop, and eventually they make a puddle. And those puddles combine to make a lake or a river, and those rivers combine to make an ocean. But it all starts with one raindrop. Change starts with one action, and we can be that action, can't we? When I ponder on the passage, perhaps the most important concept from it is that God made you and I in his image. He looked at his creation and he thought that it was good. It's easy to see our own imperfections, our weaknesses, the things we get wrong, but God looks at us and sees us as very good. We are children of God. We are beloved and here for a purpose. God doesn't see us and think that we're not good enough, but equally, God doesn't look at those around us and see them as not good enough. We are all precious children in his sight. The weakest, the most vulnerable, the dispossessed, the damaged, they're all children of God. And we have a responsibility to do our bit, to care for them all, to accept them all, and attempt to look at them through God's eyes, and to see ourselves through God's eyes. God saw everything that he'd made, and indeed it was very good. My final thought on today's passage from the creation story is that God created for us a pattern of work and of rest. For 6 days he laboured on his work of creation, and he took the 7th day and he made it holy, a day of rest. We should never underestimate the importance of rest for health, both physical and emotional. Historically, Sunday was the Sabbath day, the day of rest. But modern society's overtaken that. Shops are open. Family life has become ever more hectic. The demands on our time have become ever more hectic. And so very often we lose sight of that Sabbath day. Sunday isn't so very special in the world anymore, is it? But I do think we need to retain time when we set aside time just to be ourselves, to be at rest, to be with God. It may or may not be on a Sunday, but it's important that we rest and we reflect, because that's the pattern that God set for us. I know that for many Sunday is busy, maybe with paid employment, maybe with family commitments. But I do think that we need to make an effort to make time for ourselves and for God. Why? Well, quite simply because God told us to. So today, I'd like to remind us all that we are precious children of God, that in his sight we are very good, and that we're worthy of taking time to rest and sit with him and know that he loves us just as we are. So may I end by wishing us all a very peaceful and blessed day, when we know ourselves to be blessed by God and precious